The Buccaneers battle all the way back just to lose in heartbreaking fashion, ending their 2021 season. We take our first look at the divisional round loss to the Los Angeles Rams, take a look back at what our keys to the game were, and we hear from plenty of Buccaneers fans on this episode of the Locked On Bucs podcast. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome back to the Locked On Bucs podcast, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. We would like to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen or first watch every day. I am James Yarcho, joined as always by David Harrison. You can find everything that we are doing over at bucsnation.com. Make sure you follow along on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarcho_Bucs, at DHarrison82, and at Bucs_Nation.
Yeah, we do appreciate you guys making the Locked On Bucs podcast first listener review every day. Unfortunately, not coming to you with the best of circumstances on this episode, James, as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Not a victory Monday.
The Buccaneers fall 30-27 to the Los Angeles Rams, and the Rams will now host San Francisco 49ers next weekend in the NFC Championship game. So all I got to say about that game is go John Lynch, the fighting John Lynches. Let's do it. Look, from the beginning of this game, James, I think the offensive line issues were very clear and present. It's something that we talked about all week long leading up to the game. You and Evan talked about like Tristan Wirfs, all-pro right tackle. That doesn't just happen, especially in your second season in the NFL when you're fighting down there in the trenches. Usually it takes a little while to really kind of develop the respect of your peers, of coaches, of the media. And when you're on Tom Brady's team, we know we've already seen it just in the 2 years with the Buccaneers. It's even harder to gain the respect of others when Tom Brady's on, even if you're on defense, right? Ask Levante David, like just because Tom Brady is there, all of a sudden everybody on the defense is supposed to be better tacklers. Obviously that didn't happen as well Sunday, but you know, those offensive line issues were very clear and present from the beginning of this game. Josh Wells replacing Tristan Wirfs, but he was dealing with injuries. Even though he was able to go, was still an injured player. Ryan Jensen playing through injuries. And in the end, the Rams end up with 3 sacks, which I think most Buccaneers fans would be amazed. Say it's only 3, but Tom Brady harassed all day. According to NFL's stat tracking, official stat reporting, immediately after the game, the Los Angeles Rams credited with 6 hits on Tom Brady. I feel like it was so much more. Like I just kind of feel like it had to be a little bit more. So we'll have to see. Those numbers do get adjusted, a little bit later. So we'll have to see what those numbers say after the game has a little bit of time to rest, and they get to go back through and kind of check the numbers. But really, Tom Brady's under harassment, under duress all game long. But from the jump, James, from the very beginning of this thing, 2 3-and-outs for the Buccaneers offense in their first 4 drives, just 4 first downs in those first 4 drives. They did get 3 points, which, I mean, when you think about it, only 4 first downs, your first 4 drives, your first 15 plays of the game, you still got points. That's actually a little bit amazing by itself, but only 3 points and just not a lot going on that side of the ball. Meanwhile, the defense, Todd Bowles' unit that we have been talking about all week, had to come prepared, had to find a way to get pressure. You can't just say, well, they just beat us. You got to find a way to do it. They were getting worked early on in that game.
Yeah, the offensive line issues were very clear early in the game, and it set the tone. It set the tone for the game on the offensive side of the ball, and it was tough to watch. And the whole time you're sitting there watching, you're like, Chris Godwin would help out so much right now. Even that schmuck Antonio Brown would help out so much right now. And it was down to Evans, Fournette, and Gronk, and Brady. You know, even when the pressure wasn't there, he had the happy feet that we've seen when you get pressure on him early in the game. And yeah, you're right. The Bucs needed an answer defensively compared to what they did in week 3, and they didn't have it. Like absolutely no answer whatsoever. The Rams scored on 4 out of their first 5 drives, and they nearly scored on their 6th possession, but then Cam Akers fumbles the ball on the 1-yard line, and it was recovered by Antoine Winfield Jr. Now, I know a lot of people are upset that the officiating crew didn't let that play out. We're not going to dive too deep into the officiating crew. We all have our thoughts on Sean Hockley. But you let that play out. Antoine Winfield Jr., that might be a scoop and score, which completely shifts that entire game, at the end of half to get a scoop and score. And all of a sudden, instead of 20-3. It's now 20-10 heading into the second half. That can change the landscape of the game, but instead it did prevent the Rams from getting into the end zone. Didn't, put any points on the board for the Bucs, but in the end, the Bucs bounce back. They respond in the second half. They allow a touchdown on the Rams' second possession, but the Rams only scored on 2 of 9 possessions in the second half. 9 possessions. The Bucs forced 3 turnovers. There were 3 punts. There was a missed field goal, but it was that second score that ended up being the backbreaker. David, I know we have plenty of people call in. They're going to be frustrated. They're going to be upset, but we give a platform to our listeners to voice those frustrations, ask those questions, do what they want to do. Let's start off with a familiar name and a familiar voice, our buddy Greco.
David James is Greco. Man, what a crazy, crazy, crazy game, man. I'm heartbroken that we lost, man, but those issues in the secondary seem to reel their head back again. And I just can't believe that we would leave the secondary that open. I mean, Cooper Kupp, we got to know that that's what they're going to do. I mean, they've already thrown the ball deep on us before. So we got to know we got to cover that deep ball much better than we did. So anyway, hopefully we'll get it fixed and then coming back next year, man. This was still a good season, Bucs fans. Enjoy it. All right, go Bucs.
Greco, thank you for calling in. Always appreciate hearing from you. And Bucs fans are certainly going to need to pick me up after that game. When I'm looking for a little bit of a boost while I'm at work or I'm on the run, I can always turn to Built Bar. Built Bar is a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, maybe even better than a candy bar. And Built Bar makes it easier to stick to that resolution that you have about getting more fit. You want to eat it unlike other protein bars, which are chalky or waxy, because Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. Most of them contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carbs, 17 grams of protein. So replace your candy stash with a Built Bar stash. And there are tons of flavors to choose from. You can get yourself a mixed box, or you can order yourself boxes of just your favorites like coconut almond, peanut butter brownie, raspberry, cookies and cream, salted caramel, mint, brownie, and Built is always coming out with new limited time flavors. So check out Built.com and see what's new. While you're there, use promo code LOCKED15 and you are going to get 15% off your order. Again, promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. David, let's get to one more voicemail real quick before we hit the next segment. It's our buddy Tyler from Boston.
What's up, boys? Tyler from Boston. Man, that sucked. It's heartbreaking and it sucks. But I don't really think that we deserved to win that game anyway. And yet somehow we managed to find a way to make it interesting, to make it close. I don't think this team, this coaching staff, these players, they're not the type to make excuses. They're not going to look at injuries or penalties or anything like that. It's just stuff like that happens, and it came down to the wire. To move on from all that, though, I just want to say it's been a great couple of years. The reason there's a reason why it's so hard to repeat in the NFL, and I've been going to Bucs fans. I've been going to Bucs games for years now. I've been Bucs fan for years, and just these past couple of years, it's just been so different. It's like the energy, the fan base, just everything is just so energized. And going 30-10 in the last couple of years, including the playoffs. I mean, winning division, Super Bowl, something that has been really great. So, it's just going to be those things. We're going to probably see some changes next year, but I know here in Bucs Nation, we're going to be back next year. So go Bucs.
Thanks for making the Locked On Bucs podcast your first listen or your first view every single day. A big announcement from the network. The Peacock and Williamson NFL show is going on the road to LA for Super Week. Follow the Peacock and Williamson NFL show today to get the most comprehensive coverage of the big game. It's free and available on all platforms, just like the Locked On Bucs podcast. David Harrison.
I'm super excited for Peacock and Williamson, David, but we were supposed to be there.
Well, yes, we were. More to come on that. So, David Harrison, James Yarcho on Twitter at DHarrison82 at JYarcho_Bucs. Find all of our writing about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers over at bucksnation.com, on Twitter at Bucs_Nation, the show at Locked On Bucs. Some sad fans. It's obviously to be expected, disappointed, but I also like the appreciation, James and Tyler and Greco, and I hope that that's a theme throughout the week and a theme throughout Twitter. I know, in the immediate aftermath, it's really hard to really wrap your head around it and to try to be happy. But I was talking to Mike and Gabe, two guys that I'm in the DMs with them every game weekend and everything else. And we were talking about it, and I mentioned to them, I said, it hurts. It sucks to lose. And Tom Brady even said this in his post-game press conference, but I think it hurts more, right, from a fan base perspective, to lose when you have Super Bowl aspirations in the playoffs than it is to fall short of making the playoffs in general, right? Like this fan base has been through so many years where there were playoff aspirations and the team fell short. And while that hurts and it sucks, I think it stings harder when you're in the postseason, you're in the tournament, and you have a realistic chance of hoisting the trophy and you fall short. But I think it's a pain that comes from the joy of anticipation and the fact that you don't get to see this team meet its fullest potential. It's almost like mourning a death in the family. And I don't mean to equate a game with, that kind of stuff, but Leonard Fournette mentioned that he was dealing with a death in the family. And so real life is real life. But like I've always said, we don't mourn and we don't cry for the other person. Like, and the other person is gone and all their stresses and worries, especially if they're sick, like all that is kind of gone now. We cry for us. We cry for ourselves because of the memories we don't get to build with that person. And although it's more of a celebration of what could have been versus, I don't know if all that makes sense, but some fans are kind of complaining about the coaching, especially late, especially that Cooper Kupp catch late in the game. Listen, here's what I'm going to say. I don't have a problem with the call, to be quite honest with you. Todd Bowles is an aggressive defensive coordinator. This defense plays better when it's aggressive. We talked about this all season long for the last 2 years, really, last 3 years, really, that this defense that Todd Bowles runs plays better when it's aggressive, not when it's trying to sit back and read this and read that and read these 4 quadrants and communicate with that guy. And do you have the coverage? No, like when they're just fighting and saying, we're going after you. Antoine Winfield Jr. just blew that coverage, guys. Like, I love him to death, man. He makes a lot of good plays for this team. He's got a bright future ahead of him. But on that play specifically, Antoine just blew it. Like if Antoine is playing his assignment and staying on top of his man and making sure that Cooper Kupp doesn't get behind him, he's in position to make a play on that pass. And the blitz does its job. It makes Matt Stafford make a quick decision and get the ball. That's exactly what Todd wanted to have happen. That's exactly what happened. Antoine Winfield got caught with his eyes in the cookie jar and he got burned. Like, but that's not Todd. Like Todd Bowles has told Antoine Winfield, don't do that. Antoine has done it plenty of times. It sucks because it's like the one time really, like, especially in this game that you can look at Antoine and say, you messed this up. And then it leads to that Matt Gay field goal. But honestly, the play call was fine if it's executed properly.
Well, I'll get into that in just a minute because I don't fully agree with your assessment.
And a lot of other people don't, play it safer, absolutely. Keep everything in front of you. I got it.
And that's absolutely fair. But let's go ahead and let's get into that a little bit more because I do have my thoughts on that. And we're going to go back and we're going to do our key to victory after action review. And my key to the game was don't beat yourself. And the Buccaneers failed miserably at not beating themselves. They had 4 penalties for 61 yards. 3 of those were personal fouls. And say what you will about the taunting against Ndamukong Suh, which I thought was bogus. Say what you will about the unsportsmanlike conduct on Tom Brady, which I thought was even worse. Levante David, you are a captain and a leader on this football team, and I understand you're frustrated that your defense just gave up a 70-yard touchdown pass to Cooper Kupp, but you know the rules. Your team was flagged for taking their helmet off last week against the Eagles, and you take your helmet off on the field and slam it down. There's another 15-yard penalty. So 3 of those 4 add up to 45 yards. It was bad. 3 for 14 offensively on first downs. That is abysmal. I mentioned the 70-yard touchdown to Kupp on a blown coverage by Mike Edwards. There was miscommunication there. You saw Carlton Davis looking back and talking to him and trying to direct traffic. You have 2 kickoffs go out of bounds. I don't think I've ever seen that ever in the history of football. You took the ball away 4 times and only scored 14 points off of it. You take the ball away 4 times, you should win the game easily. You just dug yourself a hole in the first half that was nearly impossible to come out of. And they almost did come out of it. But with 6 seconds left, Cooper Kupp has the ball down on the Buccaneers 12-yard line. Former Buccaneer Matt Gay gets to come on and kick a game-winning field goal, and I think it was a bad call. You have Cooper Kupp set them up at the 44-yard line with a 20-yard catch, and then on the very next play against the number one quarterback in the NFL against the blitz, and I get that the blitz was working for them. They were getting pressure on Stafford. They were forcing 3-and-outs. They were forcing fumbles. I get that. But in that situation with 35 seconds left or 27 seconds left, whatever it was, the deepest player on your defense is 9 yards off the line of scrimmage. You can't do it. So you have nobody back deep to try to prevent what exactly just happened. You have Antoine Winfield Jr., who, I love, you love, and he's one-on-one with Kupp, and he's burnt within 2 steps. Like he doesn't get turned. He doesn't keep Kupp in front of him to force a guy who had a 47-yard field goal short beat you on a long field goal, or you're going to overtime. It's so frustrating.
What you have to remember, though, is there's over 30 seconds left at this point in time. They had just gotten gashed for 20 yards in zone coverage.
You're right.
You know what I mean? Like, this is a team that has shown all game long, like this isn't the first quarter, all game long, they've been getting gashed for large chunks or in zone coverage. So when you're Todd Bowles, say we can continue doing zone, which isn't our strength anyway, and continue getting gashed, or we can go out there and play our team, our football, and die the way we. And again, Antoine's the guy I want. Antoine or Jamel Dean. One of those two guys is the guy I want covering Cooper Kupp in that situation. You got one of them. Antoine just got caught looking in the backfield, man. That's my opinion. You got your opinion. People are going to agree with either side of it.
Hindsight's 2020. There's an alternate universe where the Bucs get to Stafford and they go to overtime. And
what will happen is the next time they run that coverage, Antoine Winfield Jr. will play his assignment instead of looking at the quarterback. Listen, if I have a problem with any coach on this team, it's Byron Leftwich, and I don't even know how fair that is because I don't know how much control of the offense Byron Leftwich really has, which is something that we've talked about. But, I like to chart the first 15 plays of the game, James. 6 of the first 15 plays in the game were runs. That's a pretty good balance. It's not 50-50 balance, but it's a pretty good balance. 0 runs in the next 14 plays. And I'm not counting the kneel down because technically the kneel down is a run. Got it. I'm not counting the kneel down, which would be the 15th play. So taking that play out, the next 14 plays minus the kneel down, all passes. You talk about my keys to the game. I had 2 of them because I do the crossover. One of them was pressure. Week 3, they had 1 sack, 4 hits. This week, they ended up with 2 sacks, 8 hits. So better, right? But we also mentioned that in the Rams' 5 losses in the season, they gave up more than 2.5 sacks in each of those losses. The Bucs come away with 2 sacks, almost win, but they don't win. So as much of it seemed like a minute number at the time, it's pretty significant. And then you look at the offense, coming into this game, the Los Angeles Rams were allowing 80% short passes over the middle and completion rate, 70% short passes on the perimeter. Tom Brady and the Buccaneers, they had an 11-yard per pass completion rate or per pass, completed, which is not terrible, right? But you also have 24 incomplete passes. 44 passes were thrown short. So the Buccaneers tried to take advantage of that. They just didn't execute. And when Tom Brady wasn't off target, the receivers weren't catching the ball or they weren't getting into the routes. They weren't getting separation. When Tom Brady was on target or wasn't on target, it was really bad. And you end up with the 1 interception on a corner route to Rob Gronkowski. And then honestly, later on, you end up almost with another interception on the same type of corner route.
Yeah. My biggest gripe, I'm with you. You had to run the ball more. And Leonard Fournette, first 2 plays of the game, runs the ball for back-to-back first downs, and then you completely abandon it. I understand you're behind, but running the ball was what was going to help you get back in it. And instead, it made the deficit larger because the offense couldn't move the ball. You needed to keep feeding Lenny. David, let's go ahead and jump over to the voicemail line one more time before we hit our next break.
Oh, man. What a crazy ending. And looked like they could almost pull it off despite it, but in the end, a Matt Gay field goal. Ugh. No Wirfs, no Brown, no Godwin. Too much against a really good Rams team, and then the stupid penalties. And all that equals together a Bucs loss. The first half, that was
some of the worst football I've ever seen in quite some time. Well, I look forward to hear what you say about it.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers let themselves down for sure. They let fans down as well. But you know what's not going to let you down, Bucs fans? It's the incredible app that everyone who buys gas needs to know about, and it's called GetUpside. Our listeners are making up to 25 cents cash back for every gallon of gas every time they fill up. All you have to do is download the free GetUpside app in the App Store or Google Play right now. Use the promo code TOUCHDOWN, and you get a bonus 25 cents per gallon on your first fill up. That's up to 50 cents cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using GetUpside. Just download the app for free and use the promo code TOUCHDOWN to get up to 50 cents per gallon cash back on your first tank. Some people who drive a lot are making as much as $200 to $300 a month in cash back, and there's no catch. The cash back is added right to your account. You can then cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or get an e-gift card to Amazon or other brands. Again, just download the free GetUpside app and use promo code TOUCHDOWN to get up to 50 cents per gallon cash back on your first tank. That's promo code TOUCHDOWN on the free GetUpside app. One more segment of the Locked On Bucs podcast, final episode for the season, but we're still here in the offseason, so don't worry about that. Let's hear from Earl.
Hey guys, it's Earl calling back again from North Tampa. All I have to say is defense and the secondary is straight trash. Straight trash. Bob Bowles, what is he thinking of calling a blitz like that? Play prevent defense or something. And Winfield, he looking back at straight trash. They literally lost the game. They had a chance. Like, I was shocked the Bucs came back and the Rams were trying to give it away. And for them to get busted like that. Secondary is straight trash. Murphy Bunting sucks. He sucks. All of them just suck. That's all I have to say. Go Bucs. See you next season. Hopefully Brady will be back. If he don't, I don't blame him.
Wrapping things up here on a Monday edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast. James Yarcho, David Harrison on Twitter at @JYarcho_Bucs, at DHarrison82. Earl is very upset. Hopefully we can talk him off the ledge a little bit. I'm not. The missed tackles by Sean Murphy Bunting were rough. There's no question about it. But dude was out there playing injured. You know, like he was questionable coming into the game. He was limited in practice, dealing with that hamstring injury. Don't know how much of it, played into his play on Sunday. But the defense, like I said in the last segment, second half, they fought their butts off. They were the reason the Bucs were able to get back into it. So you can be mad on one hand, but it was only as close as it was because of what they did on the other. David, let's dive into some turning points. For me, there's another play that we just talked about in the last segment, and it was a 20-yard catch by Cooper Kupp with 35 seconds left. It was 2nd and 11. Kupp gets out of bounds after the 20-yard gain, and that was the play that you mentioned. They get gashed in zone coverage. A big reason they got gashed there is because Sean Murphy Bunting slips, and he wasn't the only player that was slipping. We saw Mike Evans slip. We saw, Jalen Darden always slips. Hope he's okay, but he always slips. So Sean Murphy Bunting slips down, falls, leaves Cooper Kupp wide open in the pocket of that zone coverage, leads to a 20-yard gain. He gets out of bounds, stops the clock. Then you have the 44-yard gain immediately after that. So to me, up until then, it was literally anybody's game. We thought we were going to overtime, and that was the moment that it all tilted, was setting the Rams up just shy of the 45-yard line.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I get people want to blame coaches all the time, and sometimes coaches are to blame. And I look at Byron Leftwich or Bruce Arians or Tom Brady, whoever was dictating the pace of the offense during that stretch of the game. But I mean, I'm still going to stand by it. I mean, early in the game, they were playing soft. They were playing a zone defense, and people were complaining that Matt Stafford had too much time to throw the ball. At the end of the game, they blitz him, don't give him any time to throw, and people are complaining they're not playing zone. I mean, it is what it is. Antoine Winfield Jr. had the assignment. He blew the assignment. That's the last time I'm going to repeat myself. But my turning point for this one, James, I'm actually going to turn to our buddy Tito because he agrees with my turning point in this football game.
Hey, this is Tito from Los Angeles. Game's winding down, 4 minutes left. Early on in the season, when the Rams picked up Von Miller, I remember thinking they're doing this because they're anticipating seeing Tom Brady in the postseason. And sure enough, here we are. And, the Rams got better. We got worse over the course of the season. So I wasn't surprised by the big lead they had, but we got the luck that we needed to win this game. And I think the play of the game, though, was that 3rd and 5 in the fourth quarter where the Rams had that botched snap and we had a chance to really make it a game. And, you know, knowing that the Rams had a great pass rush and have been harassing Tom Brady, we go ahead and do a pass play and Tom gets sacked for 10-yard loss. And I just did not understand that play call, knowing that you're going to go for it on 4th down. I think that was the play of the game because that really killed us and it turned it into a 4th and 14. And that whole weird play where Mike Evans got penalized or got hit late, kind of made things interesting. But I think that was really just bad play calling at that point. But you know, at least it wasn't a total embarrassing loss. We had a good season. We just didn't have what it took to bring it home. And what are you going to do? You know, just got to cherish these moments. And it was a fun ride. And who knows if Tom comes back, but I'd like to know what you guys think. See you guys around.
All right, Tito, appreciate the phone call. And yeah, man, that's my turning point in this game. So when I heard your voicemail, I was like, that's perfect. It sets it up. And the irony here, James, is as much as I'm not willing to blame Todd Bowles for that final play call and for Antoine Winfield Jr. blowing his assignment, I'm also not actually giving the defense as much credit as you are for the comeback in the first place. And one of the reasons is some of these turnovers that happened really weren't a product of the Buccaneers defense. And if you look at it, especially early in the game, the very first scoring drive of the game for the Los Angeles Rams, Jamel Dean drops an interception. I think it was Raheem Nunez-Roches, has Matt Stafford in his grasp on 1st and 20, could have brought up 2nd and 30, 2nd and 25 or something like that. Both of those plays happened on the first drive of the game. Defense is in the spot they should be in. They just don't execute the play. They don't do their job. You know what I mean? And the Matt Stafford fumble, ball sails over his head. Buccaneers recover it. I love it. I'm happy for it. Don't get me wrong, but not a forced turnover. I mean, the Buccaneers defense didn't really do anything to force that turnover. Anyway, the Bucs end up with the ball, drive inside the Rams 30 on this play that Tito is talking about, end up with a 1st and 10 inside the 30 on the first down. They run the ball with Leonard Fournette. They get 5 yards. Everything's working well. 2nd and 5. They go deep to Rob Gronk. Okay, 2nd and 5, you go deep. On 3rd down, they pass the ball again. And they try to pass the ball again. They end up sacked for a 9-yard loss. Now it's 4th and 14. You go from 2nd and 5 to 4th and 14 in a situation where you're essentially in 4-down territory. So now from 4th and 14, you have to go for at least a 15-yard route. And what ends up happening is it's an incomplete pass intended for Mike Evans. He gets hit late after the ball hits the ground by Eric Weddle. There's a penalty, but it's still the Rams football. And not for nothing, but again, with Tom Brady being off for a lot of this game, that 2nd and 5 deep pass to Rob Gronkowski, the same corner pass that got intercepted. Tom Brady was late on it again, short on it again, left it behind Gronk. And the same safety that intercepted the first one almost intercepted the second one. So just a lot of things not going right. But I agree with Tito. I mean, the offensive play calling and just the foresight, right? The setting thing up. We talk about football as a chess match, right? You're always setting something up. I didn't see a lot of that. I didn't see a lot of that foresight. And you go back to that field goal, right? That a lot of people, and I know the fans in the stands were booing about it, right? They didn't want a field goal in that situation. I think the Bucs still only had 3 points at that time. That gives you 6. But it's 4th down. It's 4th and 11. And at that point in the game, you really have no reason to think that offensively you're going to suddenly figure out how to gain 11 yards on one play when you couldn't do it on 3rd down, you couldn't do it on 2nd down, you couldn't do it on 1st down. You're just suddenly going to become efficient. But then again, if you're thinking that you're in 4-down territory, because they cut to Bruce Arians and he's kind of going back and forth, and he says, you know what, a word I'm not going to say on this show, get out there and kick it. And he kind of just does that, like, just go kick it. And I'm like, man, you should know the situation you're in. That's communication. Hey, Byron, we're in 4-down territory. So if we're in 4-down territory on 3rd and 11, we shouldn't be throwing a 15-yard route into double coverage. We should be throwing a 4-yard check down, a 5-yard check down, maybe a screen pass, maybe an 8-yard slant. I don't know, but something that's going to potentially get the first down. But if it doesn't, it sets us up in 4th and manageable. So again, you know, those types of things, that's where I had a problem with the coaching in this game. And I feel like that really came back to bite the Bucs in the butt. But James, they're in the divisional round of the playoffs. More wins in a single season than this franchise has ever seen in its entire existence. So a lot to celebrate. And we're going to finish this episode with a little bit of a news type segment. We're going to call it a silver lining, right? We're not going to pick players of the game for a loss like this. We're going to pick our silver lining because there is always a little bit of good going on. Mine, James, the young nucleus of players on this team has definitely shown its value. And I'm looking at guys like Jamel Dean when he was in healthy, Antoine Winfield Jr., despite that final play of the game, you know, love the kid, bright future. Jordan Whitehead has gotten a lot of praise stepping up. Devin White, hasn't taken the step I think a lot of people wanted him to, and maybe are disappointed that he didn't take that next step. But in moments, he's still kind of flashed, shown that he still needs that running mate in Levante David. Vita Vea has still been dominant in points. All-pro right tackle and Tristan Wirfs. I mean, there are some really good. Mike Evans is still young. Chris Godwin, if they can bring him back. Scotty Miller, like, why haven't we seen more Scotty Miller this season? I don't know what the answer is, but he's still young. He's still got a bright future. Even if Tom Brady decides to hang it up, which I know we're going to talk about more on tomorrow's episode because we wanted to focus on the game today, the Buccaneers have a lot of young talent. So there is a lot of potential for this team to be very successful, even post Brady, even post Arians. And it should be very exciting for the fan base that you should have playoff football to complain about for years to come.
I agree wholeheartedly with everything you just said. And it kind of plays a little bit into my silver lining. And look, this is a roster full of players that won the Super Bowl unexpectedly. You know, nobody before the season was predicting them to win the Super Bowl. They end up getting it done. And then all these guys take discounts to return. They wanted to come back. They wanted to do it again. And they're leaving this season with a sour taste in their mouth because they failed at that objective. Jason Pierre-Paul just suffered his first career postseason loss. There's a lot of work to be done as far as constructing this roster. There's a lot of free agents, David, that you and I are going to be talking about in the coming weeks and months. But this is going to be a team that is hungrier than ever for a redemption tour, for a revenge tour, for whatever you want to call it. This is a group of guys that set out to win another Lombardi trophy together. And I think a lot of them are going to want that chance one more time, including Tom Brady. And we're going to talk about that more on tomorrow's show. With that, David, I think it's time to go ahead and get out of here. So we thank you to everyone for making today's episode of the Locked On Bucs podcast your first listen or first watch every day. And thank you for coming to us 5 days a week, all season long. It's been an absolute blast covering this team for you this season. It's been a blast covering the team for you for all the seasons, but yeah, this one has been especially fun. We had a great time talking about this team, day in, day out, week in, week out, and we wouldn't do it if it weren't for all of you. So thank you to all of you for that. If you have any questions, comments, thoughts, go ahead and give us a call at 813-444-5841. Make your second listen today, the Locked On Bets podcast, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. Also free and available on all platforms. Check out everything David and I are doing over at BucsNation.com. Follow along on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarcho_Bucs, at DHarrison82, and at Bucs_Nation. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, wash your hands, be good to one another. We thank you so much for joining us right here at Locked On Bucs.